All the bags in her hands, like 6 bags, and you know, marching out of the store.
Scott, you ready? Okay, here we go. Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled. I couldn't have scripted how happy I am to be here. This is amazing, and I'm thrilled and grateful that you're all here with me as part of this program. It's really a pleasure to welcome a number of old friends and make a number of new friends. And I'm so glad that you're all here today. Thanks to Scott and Heidi, who we're going to, and Megan, who we're going to talk with in just a minute. But I just wanted to kind of give an overview about what I hope will be a really meaningful program and perhaps the beginning of some ongoing dialogues. First of all, I think I met everybody, but at the risk of not, I'll introduce myself a little more formally. I'm Jonathan Feldstein. I have the privilege of serving as president of the Genesis 123 Foundation. Part of the reason I'm excited to be here is because of all the things that are going on and you're all here, but part of it is also marking the winding down of my 2.5-week exhausting trip, and I'm getting to go home this week, which is really exciting too. But I really do feel very much at home here, and I'm grateful. I've loved as I'm going through my notes, not hearing what you're all saying, but the lively dialogues among all of you, and I hope that will continue among us and everyone who's going to come up on the panel and be part of this conversation. As the president of the Genesis 123 Foundation, I have the privilege of serving in the capacity of serving something that I was called to do in the late 1980s in Cleveland, Tennessee, the first time I ever walked into a church in my life. And I'm not going to get into that tonight. You can maybe save that for round 2 of Nashville Voices for Israel. But it's so important for me to be here, and over the years, what I've learned, what I've adapted, and what I hope that God sees that I've kind of fine-tuned what He called me to do, is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new and unique and meaningful. And one of the things that's turned me off in all of this over the years is how I see so many good Christians being what I call objectified as a faith-based ATM. By far too many people just trying to get money out. And money is definitely a way to bless Israel, and I don't ever diminish that, but there are so many ways in which we can and do bless Israel, and I guess it's safe to say I kind of reject that whole notion of it all being about money. It's about relationships. And so from that perspective, as president of Genesis 123 Foundation, we run a lot of programs that do exactly that build relationships. Some of you know, you were among the first people that we discussed the whole Run for Zion program. Scott and Lydia, who are here. Run for Zion is the first Christian program around the Jerusalem Marathon. We'll talk about that later. We established during the pandemic, when people couldn't come to Israel, and we wanted to maintain relationships, a series of global prayer events one of them, I mean, they were all great, but truly one of them was one of the best things I've done in my life. It was a 13-hour live, non-stop prayer event that began in China, in Chinese, with underground churches participating, praying in Chinese for Israel, moving over to India. We kept going west, came to Israel, Africa, Europe, and coming across the ocean. I didn't even know there were native languages in Hawaii and Alaska that people prayed in. We had people praying in Swahili and, of course, Spanish and Polish, and I don't even remember all the other languages. It was amazing, and it's something that we do as a tremendous way to build bridges. Thank God now we're back in a situation so y'all can come to Israel and be part of what we're doing in Israel in person. But these virtual events still have tremendous worth. We created a program called Verses for Zion to engage Christian children with Israel in ways that are biblical and age appropriate. And 2 years ago, next month, we launched our very first webinar in a series called Inspiration from Zion, which got such tremendous feedback that I was invited the following year to be the first Orthodox Jew to host a weekly program, a weekly podcast on the Charisma Podcast Network about Israel. And it's been going on. I think we're releasing episode 49 this week, and I'm told that somewhere in the range of 125,000 people have downloaded this thing in a year, all organically. So that's amazing. Is there feedback, or is it just me? Yeah. And then of course the Run for Zion program as well. Tonight, Matt, you can still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm really so grateful for all of you participating, everyone who's watching online and who will watch this online in the future. We have a really exciting and diverse panel of people with whom I'm going to have the privilege of having conversations and eliciting from a wide variety of voices why Israel is significant, why Israel is significant in general, and specifically from some of you here in the Nashville area. I'm looking forward to these conversations that I hope will spark deeper conversations, lots of prayer, and other ways that we can be involved together, but ultimately, as I said at the outset, to be part of building bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are meaningful. That's real important. Special thanks to Scott and Heidi Cunningham and Megan. I'm so glad you're here as well, who are our partners tonight, our hosts. Many of you are their friends, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Scott and Heidi, can't figure out how long ago it was that I was here when we met the first time, but it feels like it probably should be decades, right? But it's not. It's just a few years. I've been blessed to have a really deep, warm relationship with you, and I'm so grateful. How neat, Scott, that when we were sitting at the David Citadel Hotel not 2 months ago, just brainstorming, this came up, and here we are today, sitting together. What a blessing. Before we begin with Scott and Heidi, I just want to share just one news item, so I don't forget by the end of the day. For those of you who've been following the news, you might know this. For those of you who haven't, as of today, the Israeli government and the Knesset is dissolving itself. That's it's complicated in a parliamentary democracy why these things happen, but basically the government that kind of was held together with a bunch of bubble gum over the last year, our longest lasting government in the last 3 or 4 years, has fallen apart. What that means is we have elections that will be coming up again, probably in the fall, and what that means is we're going to be entering our fifth election in about 3.5 to 4 years. It kind of underscores a period of political instability that I haven't liked very much living in Israel. And in addition to the instability and all the social problems that causes and will continue to cause, one of the things that I just want to ask all of you, not now, but just in general, in your prayer for Israel, to pray that things work out well. I don't know who's going to be elected, who I will support, I don't know yet. I know who I won't support, but that's a different conversation. But especially now, when Iran has been really flexing its muscle and threatening Israel in ways that are sadly new and unique. We need these prayers. We need to make sure that Iran or none of our other enemies look at this as an opportunity to attack. So with that, I'm so thrilled that Scott and Heidi are here and that we get to have this conversation. Just for those of you who aren't their friends or aren't their old friends and are here before, Scott and Heidi Cunningham are the founders of Local Ark, All True Ministries, and Reborn Warrior, and of course our gracious hosts today. They've made it their mission to serve those who serve others and are deeply connected to Israel. Scott is a retired disabled veteran who proudly served in the U.S. Air Force, and that gives him a part of his heart for also serving those who continue to serve others. And Heidi has spent the last 40 plus years integrating her hospitality skills in her ministry. She's passionate about mentoring women and believes that everyone is uniquely created by God for a special purpose, and she wants to help them find that. The Cunninghams have a deep love for God and country and appreciate the great sacrifice made by our frontline defenders and their families. Through their faith in God, they faced many of life's journeys and hardships together and found peace and healing. Scott's personal faith story, along with his desire to see families restored and made whole, is at the heart of Reborn Warrior. Scott and Heidi are married 35 plus years. They have two wonderful daughters, one of whom is here with us today, and 3 grandchildren, one of whom I got the pleasure of meeting today. Scott and Heidi, thank you. Thank you for, we could end tonight now because I just feel like we've accomplished what we intended to, and I'm so grateful. It's a blessing to be here.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, thank you very much. You said it all. That was very
Did I?
Yeah,
well, it's
we're very thankful that you come here. What a blessing to have you here. It was just a month and a half ago that we were talking about this, and I offered the space, and you're coming back. And now here we are. Doing one of the really miraculous things that have happened in the past couple of months.
It really is. It really is.
But thank you for this whole family. Does a great job over there. His sons, all his families all serve in the IDF. One still may be in it. Is he done now?
He finished
He's
recently.
just finished recently. So it's really, he's doing a fabulous job. He came from the United States. Made it Aliyah. How long ago?
It's August will be 18 years since we're in Israel. Yeah.
Okay, so he's from back in the East Coast. We come from originally from New Jersey.
Well, let's talk about you and your family now. And by the way, I neglected in introducing you and thanking you. It's not just the Cunninghams, but also a great team of people with whom I've had the pleasure of interfacing today and in the previous weeks. And thank you for all of you for helping to make this possible. What's Local Ark? Tell us about that. We're here in this fantastic facility. What do you want people to know about connecting with you here and why why you invited me to do this here?
Well, hi, I'm Meg. I'm going to speak on this part of it. So you guys are all in Local Ark, which is a creative premium space here in Franklin, Tennessee. And we're located about 7 minutes outside of downtown Franklin, which is wonderful for location, and about 30 minutes outside of Nashville. And we've hosted everything here from team retreats to songwriting to photo and video. You saw our studio over here. If you got to walk through the chapel, you need to if you haven't yet. That space has been prayed over, given by God. It's got a western wall in it. It is meant for creative God ideas. It's like a think tank for God. And then this whole space here, we posted some weddings here. We posted some weddings in the chapel. And then we have the outside space as well. And our heart when we were putting this whole space together, my husband put these floors in, he stained these walls. We all poured our heart and soul. My paintings on the wall out there, we all, this is all of us pouring out to make a space that people can come in and feel like, hey, I can connect with God here, I can create, I can be at peace, I can be free, I can see horses over there, I can, just take a breath and let creativity flow. So that's basically what we've created here. To allow people to have that kind of space, and that's our heart, is to offer that to the community.
And it's really beautiful. I don't need to say that. You all can see it in your beautiful eyes. It's really stunning, and we're privileged that we're here. Now, you mentioned the chapel. I just got to pop my head in there earlier for the first time. I've seen the pictures. But it's probably the only place in Tennessee that has a scale model of a temple, much less made out of olive wood. We had a connection. I was able to help you find that, but why? Why do you have a model of the temple in Franklin, Tennessee?
Well, as I started building it, it just became more about Israel than it was the space it was originally we were going to have. And we built an altar, just for that part, we built an altar and it didn't fit some of the other elements we had. It just wasn't strong enough for the stone piece there. And I was thinking, what should go here to honor God? More than I thought the outer court, inner court, Holy of Holies, this temple. And then we talked, we found it, and it fit there. It came in like on the Ark, and, the movie of the Ark, where it came in the box, and this thing got shipped over in one piece, in this brown box, and it was just incredible. Thinking it fits there perfectly, my daughter's paintings over it. And the whole place, when you go in, you see what it is. It's still a little bit of development. Also, the western wall that's there, we built it. The Lord said, have some a Christian, a believing stonemason to build that there. I mean, it was 10. There's Jacob's ladder was in there, 10 by 10, a replica of that. There's the people be putting prayers into this wall, and I just delivered them over to Israel just now, and it was quite supernatural. The wall, if you get to go back now, the wall's been cleared out of all the prayers. You can usually not find a space to put them there, but now you can actually put your hand in some of the spaces, and it's so supernatural. Put my hand in, it was like the Twilight Zone. You actually put your hand in, all the prayers that go up there. It's so powerful. The wall.
Well, I'll be your emissary. If people have prayers that they want to write, I'm going home this week, and I'll be glad to take your prayers and put them in the wall, or you can store them in Scott and Heidi's wall until the time comes.
I was going to add that there's actually a prayer that I put in the wall that he took over from there, and I've been praying for 7 months for this thing to come through, and the day he put it in that wall, I got the email that the refund had happened for thousands of dollars for one of my Christian clients that had, all this money was taken. It was the coolest thing. Like, I've been praying, I did everything I could, and I gave it to him after putting it in there, and it got on the wall that day in Israel, and then that email came in, so it's pretty cool.
But back to the temple, I kind of thought, not in a bad way, but it was crazy when you asked me if I had any way of getting a model of the temple, and I really didn't think of it, but really, it was really supernatural how a friend of mine connected me to a Palestinian Arab from Bethlehem who works in the grocery store where I do most of my shopping, and who happens to have a tourist store in Bethlehem, and it was during the pandemic, so no one was coming, and it was inventory. I mean, originally he wanted a lot more money for it, but it was inventory. Every little penny, I don't remember how much it was blessing him. So it was a really cool way that
he got his money back, and we got a beautiful olive wood. That's
stunning. Stunning.
Did you with our trips to Israel, even the first time we went to Israel, we felt like we had come home for the first time, which is a really strange thing that you make a trip to Israel and you would feel at home for the first time. So when we come back here, which is where we live, it's like bringing a piece of, because that's where our heart is anyway.
Yeah.
So these are all reminders to us of where we come from, of what's most important to us.
But let me tell you, everyone here, I'm assuming, has a heart for Israel and there's a connection, whether you've been there yet or not. But why? Why is Israel so important?
Since I was a little girl, I had been reading the Bible, and I love the Bible, and I read it every day, and it's always been important to me. And my father took my family to a church that always talked about Israel being, and the Jewish people being the chosen ones, and I can remember hearing that it was the Jewish people who gave us our Bible, who wrote the words, who shared it with the nations. And so that was always in my limited understanding growing up, that was my understanding. So as the years passed, I realized that, yes, the Jewish people have held true to the Word of God. They have given us the very, because I love God so much, and I love the Bible, and it's my roadmap. It's like a love letter from God. It's everything you need in life. Every answer is found in the Word of God. And to think that the Jewish people carried this word like lamplighters, they have carried this word at the cost, that it's cost them everything to carry this word to all the nations.
Oh, it costs us a lot, but we're also blessed.
Yes, but it has definitely, it's meant that you have been almost like separated out. You had to fight for it. You had to, yes, and you are blessed, and God has had his hand upon you, and the miracles show that over the years, and the things that God has done intervening during wars and different things that have happened. But my love for Israel started when I was a little girl and has continued all the way through the years. And my heart is just very connected to the Jewish people, as is everyone who loves God. I don't know how you could love God and not be connected to the Jewish people. It doesn't seem like a possibility. It's not a possibility. Because God who created us all made it that way, for us to all be connected.
No argument here.
And then there's one other thing I would say is when I was so pivotal in my life was when I was 15 years old, a movie came out called The Hiding Place.
Yes.
And it was Corrie ten Boom. And I'm Dutch on both sides, and I remember this Dutch woman, but it was more than that. It was what she did because I never really heard talk of the Holocaust until then. I really didn't in church. They didn't really talk about it in the churches I was in. But when I saw this story and her life story, and I thought, wow, this really happened. And this was really, like, life is so fragile. In 1 second, everything can change. In one moment, it can change for people. And to see the love that this family, the Corrie ten Boom family, had for God, and in their watch shop, and in hiding Jews behind the walls of their makeshift bedroom, makeshift wall, and hiding them there, and having all kinds of codes on. They acted like they had parts that they were getting for watches, but it really meant that they needed something for the people they were hiding, and there were all kinds of things, and then somebody ratted on them, and they were found out. But then the journey through the concentration camp, holding on to their faith in God, holding on to their love for God, sharing the good news with other people who needed hope, needed something. And then even afterward, Corey's story about forgiveness and love and forgiving the guard that hurt her sister Bessie, and just that whole story meant so much to me. Like, I was never the same. After I saw that movie, and I would have been 15 years old, 1975 it came out, I remember thinking, I would want to be like that. Like, I made a declaration inside myself. That's who I would want to be. I would want to do what Corey did. And I know that's a strange thing for a 15-year-old girl to say, but God brought me to that place to do that. And then he was really setting the stage for years down the road. And for this time even when we get to work with the Jewish people, which is, it's so humbling because it's such a blessing.
And you've been blessed. The doors that have opened for you and the relationships that you've developed are stunning. It's astounding.
Yes.
God
has opened so many doors.
Right.
We couldn't have opened those doors.
Last question. Scott, you're wearing your We Warm Warrior shirt. I think when we met, we spoke probably most about that and your heart for really connecting those who serve others, right? Helping those, but also a deep component of that is also bringing Israel to them as part of the ministry. Can you talk about that? Why is that significant?
I just think they have something called birthright too for the Jewish people to come back. They come back here. But I'm also wanting to be able to bring our veterans, service industry people, and others with the same thing, to be able to bring them back there. And I can pick one of every restaurant, every place. I'm getting off a little bit, but the veterans need to go there. But we also, they are us, Israel is us. So we have so much connected together with our veterans and them. I've been trying to put that together. We're kind of rebooting some of it now after COVID. So now we're looking at how we're going to tackle this through the PTSD. We have a partnership with the Jerusalem College of Technology, which is the top one in the world for PTSD. So they say. But they're certainly in the top 10. And we're looking to build this program right now with our veterans, caregivers. If you help the women, you help the men. So we're just trying to retool some of this right now. But there's so much.
Yeah, you shared with me, I think, when you were on a tour in a hospital in Israel, how you asked to go into the kitchen to meet the workers there, not the doctors on the front line, not the people saving lives and stitching people up, but the people who are providing and making it all happen behind the scenes. It's a tremendous heart that you have for that, and a great way to connect people differently which is why it speaks to me so much. And the nice thing is that everybody who you're going to hear from tonight is local, except me. So in order to connect with me, you have to do it virtually or come to Israel, and certainly pray for the latter. But you're all connected, and Scott and Heidi.
And one thing about the hospital too, they were so thrilled. Most people go there and they're looking at this machine or that machine, all the other equipment. But all the people from the hospital, when bad things are happening, you go there into the kitchen area and they help you. It's a peaceful place. And so when I walked in there and they thought I was going on to go to the kitchen, they were so shocked. This speaker from the Zion Hospital, they were so happy to show me the whole place. And I want to serve the servants. So the Lord's doing something different to serve the servants. There's a lot of people helping all the other people, but we're after the $10 to $25 hour people. And somebody's got to serve them and connect with them. And the Lord's coming after them to bless them. And putting us together with them. We're building an ark to lead the revival of the service ministry. And we're going to start over in Israel and here.
Great.
And many times the people that serve us are hidden, where they don't have voices and they don't have the platform, and they don't have someone pouring life into them. And so the idea is, whether they're serving as a veteran or a first responder, or they're serving in hospitality or in other fields, the idea is to turn the tables and to connect with them and to love on them, to teach them trade skills, to teach them life principles, spiritual principles, to help them to find their identity. That part comes with bringing them to Israel, so that they can find who they are in God, and they can find their identity, and they can also find the gifting that God's given them to bring forth into this world. Because we need everybody to stand up. We need everybody to get up there, and we need more positive talk about Israel and about loving Israel. And we need to stomp out every area where anti-Semitism has taken a hold in college campuses and all over. So this is like an army of people behind the scenes. And we have, and God is giving us what we need to reach these people. And
Great
that's
vision.
so, thank you.
Amazing. It's an amazing vision, and thank you for what you do. Thank you for being part of blessing me and my family and our deep friendship, and for hosting tonight.
Well, we love you.
Love you back.
And you're
Love you
doing
back.
great.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to call up Dr. Tony Crisp, who's going to be our next guest. While he's coming up, let me just do a quick introduction. Dr. Crisp is a native Tennessean. He served as pastor for more than 45 years all throughout America, in both large and a variety of large and small churches. Presently, he's the lead elder and teaching pastor at the Remnant Church in Kingsport, Tennessee. He served on various committees and boards of Southern Baptist denominational life, on university and seminary faculties, and trustee of 2 universities. He presently serves on the board of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, USA, and is an advisor to the Museum of the Jewish People in Tel Aviv, and is on the National Council of AIPAC. Tony's been traveling to Israel since 1977 and owns and is president of TLC Holy Land Tours, offering customized study tour and travel for Christian discipleship, educating and engaging evangelicals in discovering the Judaic roots of their faith. He's an authority on the historical, geographical, and cultural context of both ancient and modern Israel. Dr. Crisp is the senior Bible teacher of the national TV and radio program Bible Time Broadcast and host of the On the Way with Dr. Tony Crisp daily podcast. He's now reaching to over 50 nations and 2,000 cities worldwide. He's the author of several books, including the one that jumps out to me in this conversation, A Passport to Israel, A Pilgrim's Guide, and several others that you'll have to look up. He and his wife Karen have been married for 44 plus years and have 3 children and 5 grandchildren.
Wow.
It is a delight to have you. Maybe grab the microphone so we can have a conversation everyone can hear. It really is a delight. We've been following one another a bit on social media, have overlapped in person a couple of times, but it seems like every time you're in Israel, I'm here or vice versa. So what a blessing that you're here with us. And you've been connecting Christians to Israel and bringing them to Israel for decades. How did you get called to do this? Where did it come from?
Well, early on, Jonathan, first of all, I grew up as an Appalachian kid. No running water, grew up like in the 30s. Never read a serious book until I was 19 years old.